Well, this morning we're going to look at our second in our series of our responsibility. And I had in mind for the second week of this series a particular question. But while I was doing my devotions this week, my direction was changed a bit, and I came across another question, and it's this one. What is our ability to respond when the tide is taking us off course? What is our ability to respond when the tide is taking us off course? My dad has a boat, and my brothers and I, we like it for skiing, whereas he likes to fish. And so we'll go out fishing in the boat, and many times we'll be out there and we'll just decide to pull up the anchor and just drift. Now, going out, usually we're not catching any fish. Going out fishing with my family is really relaxing. There's nothing to do, really. And so you'll have the line over, you'll have your finger on the line, your eyes will be half shut, and then all of a sudden there'll be this sense of urgency because you realise that while you haven't been paying attention, the tide's actually drifted you into the rocks. And so you have to get the engine going pretty quickly and get out of there before you wreck your boat. In life, it's very easy to be carried along by the dominant culture. And sometimes we'll glide along fine like this for a while, but then all of a sudden we'll realise that we've been taken off course. And why does this matter? Surely as long as there's lots of us with you, you're going to have company. Surely that can't be too bad. Everyone's in the same boat. It matters because God has a huge plan for your life. And it's underway right now in your lives. He knows the destination he wants to take you to. And it is living life set apart for him. Experiencing life as we were created to enjoy it. And one thing is certain. We won't reach God's destination for our lives being driven by the tide. And that means we need to respond. If we're going to get to where Jesus wants to lead us, if we're to experience the fullness of life he came to bring us, we will need to respond as the tide starts to push us off course. Our text for this morning is 1 Timothy chapter 6, and the part we're focusing on starting at verse 11, is really Paul's answer to Timothy of how he can respond and how he should respond in light of some of the influences around him that would lead him astray. Paul warns Timothy. He said, some people want to get rich. They fall into foolish desires that lead them to destruction. You see, the love of money, the need to have more, is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. And that's not the only issue that Paul deals with Timothy over, and I'm going to paraphrase some of the other ones, some of the other issues, some of the other descriptions of the tide that would push Timothy off course. And he says it like this. Some people have chased money, others have sought fame and success, making them proud and only loving themselves. Some have joined the tide of being lazy, being ungrateful, being discontent, being bitter. Some are going along with the flow in pursuit of pleasure rather than God. Some even jump on the tide of being religious, but reject the power that could make them godly. Some people do that, says Paul, but you. But for you, it is to be different. Men and women of God, there is another way. We are able to respond and live differently in a world that entices us off course. So how are we to respond? Firstly, flee. Get out of there. To me, I think of the frog in the frog in the water. If you drop it in hot water, it jumps out. Whereas if you put it in the pot and you warm it up slowly, they don't realise until too late. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you all would know that one. And so, I'm not suggesting anything. Sorry, no, not suggesting anything for people. They don't notice in time that it's getting hot. Okay? Paul says, take notice. And when you see attitudes and behaviours that are unacceptable to God becoming part of your life, then get out of there. Now, I went to the Greek and looked this up because I was a little concerned about that, what it was telling us to do there with because some translations say flee, other translations say run away. And so I went to the Greek and had a look at what it means in Greek. And it turns out that it means flee and run away. But the reason I looked it up was because some use this verse as an excuse to extract themselves from society, to withdraw from the world. But if we look at this passage carefully, Paul isn't telling Timothy to become a monk. He's not telling him to live his life in seclusion. We are to live in the world, but when the world's running in a direction that is away from God, we're to run in a different direction. When we're called to flee, it's not a negative message. It's not a put your hands up in the air and withdraw yourself and, hide me, hide me. When Paul says to flee, he says, flee from that and pursue something greater. There may be strong pressure to chase pleasure, to chase riches and position, but you are to pursue something greater. You are to pursue righteousness and a godly life, along with faith and love, perseverance and gentleness. Some of you know that one night when I was 22, I was sitting in the hospital lab. I was at work, and work got slow, and it was probably about 10:30 at night, and I went into the reception area, and there was a Gideon's Bible, and I was reading the Gideon's Bible that night. And in the preceding weeks, I'd had a few offers come across my path that I could have taken up and gone and earned some more money, gone and taken on different jobs that would have improved my livelihood and maybe a different career path. And at the same time, Kayleen and I were wrestling and praying over whether God wanted us to become officers. And so this night I found myself led to today's text. Don't go chasing money or position or anything else. Pursue righteousness and a godly life, faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness. And for me, that was God's confirmation of what was to be my goal in life and where he was calling me to go. And there may be some this morning who this text is a confirmation of something God is calling you to do. But as we said before, this text isn't about extracting ourselves from the world, but changing our focus in it while we're living in it. The message this morning transcends our job. Godliness and righteousness are to be pursued wherever we are. To flee is to change focus. Fleeing describes a dramatic choice. I'll no longer dabble, no longer entertain curiosity on these things. My focus is going to be on something greater. What we really want, what we have given our hearts to, will have our attention. We will look at what we're interested in. And this is really important because when you're traveling, usually what your eye is on is what you'll hit. And right now, there was going to be a bit of a funny clip, and I forgot to bring it. But the funny clip I'll describe for you was just